Welcome to Lecture 15, Different Kinds of Pseudoscience. In this lecture, I'm going to bring up several different kinds of pseudoscience and talk about them. Now, I'm not trying to attack your personal belief system. If you want to believe in these, that's wonderful, that's great, go ahead and believe in these. What I'm pointing out is that these are pseudosciences, that there is no evidence that says these are true. There is no evidence that says these are accurate. There is no evidence that says these are the way the world works. I'm going to talk about several of these different pseudosciences. We look at, first of all, why do we even believe in pseudoscience? And I have a little video here, but once again, I don't have the copyright on it, so I'm not showing it on this video. One of the reasons we believe is simply because it's fun. It's cool to believe in this sort of stuff. And I want to believe in stuff that's fun. It's fun to believe in ghosts. It's fun to believe in UFOs coming around. It's just cool. It's great to believe that there's a Loch Ness monster. It's a wonderful thing. And it's also simple. Pseudoscience has a strong tendency to simplify everything, and it does not require any depth of scientific knowledge or any deep thinking. And thinking is hard. We don't like to think. And pseudoscience just makes it really, really simple. A good example is astrology, one of our most common pseudosciences. Almost every newspaper publishes an astrology column. Astrology was created more than 3,000 years ago. People looking up in the sky and seeing those little stars and noticing the stars have this pattern to them, recognizing the pattern, noticing that the planets travel through this string of constellations. They put their myths together with those constellations, and then they said, you know what, if you're born under this constellation, then you have the same qualities of this myth. No real rhyme or reason to it, just what it was done. And yet we still use that same pattern today, even though the Earth has tilted a little bit in a process called precession. So the sign that you're born under today would not have been the same sign that you were born under 3,000 years ago, and yet but still you have those same qualities. Those qualities didn't change, but you're born under an entirely different sign than you would have been 3,000 years ago. But they still give you the same qualities of this. And another little video. Iridology is another one. Iridology says that I can diagnose your illnesses just by looking at the patterns in your iris. This is iridology. Iridology is one of those pseudosciences that started from a single incident. A guy named Egon von Pinsky, back in the early 1800s, had an injured owl. The owl had a broken leg. And he noticed that in one of the irises of this owl there was a fleck, just a little gold speck in there. And yet when the owl's leg healed up, that fleck went away. And so he made this connection that the broken leg was actually represented into the eyeball. That the entire body is represented in one piece of the body. This is called a homunculus. That's what just that the entire body is represented in one piece of the body. Now there have actually been scientific studies trying to relate whether iridology is true. Can we diagnose somebody simply by the patterns and the colors and the flecks and the spots in their irises? And scientific studies have shown that there is no better chance of diagnosing somebody from their iris than there is from just guessing, random choice. Another one very similar to this is reflexology, that your entire body is represented in your feet. And by manipulating parts of your feet, I can manipulate parts of your body. So there's nerve connections from your feet to your spleen, to your stomach, to your pancreas, and just by manipulating parts of your feet, I'm affecting other parts of your body. Very, very similar thing with using the homunculus again, and has proven absolutely not valid. Let's see, go over to, I missed one, ghost hunting. Ghost hunting is becoming really, really popular now. You see it in TV shows, you see it in movies, and we're not talking again about the belief in ghosts. If you believe in ghosts, that's fine. You want to believe in ghosts, that's fine. What we're talking about is the science of ghost hunting. Looking at what is the evidence that ghosts actually exist. Is there any evidence that ghosts actually exist? Even what is the definition of a ghost? What is a ghost? Is there a standard definition for what a ghost is? Much of the evidence that ghost hunters put out is done in the form of photography or ghost photographs. Ghost photographs are really anomaly hunting. They look for anything unusual, and then our brains are pattern seeking. We seek patterns in what we see. So your brain puts the stuff together and sees a person standing there when all it is just a bunch of mist. But once you've seen it, once your brain recognizes this pattern, you cannot unsee it. It's always there. Some of it is simply anomaly. It could be a problem with the film. It could be a problem with the lighting. And some of it, especially in our digital age, is a problem with not understanding how to use digital cameras and all of the different settings on a digital camera. It's very, very easy to get a ghost photograph using a digital camera. And ghost hunting doesn't do any hypothesis testing. They automatically assume this is a ghost. And then they go out and try and find evidence to prove that this is a ghost. They don't look for any evidence that says this is not a ghost, that this is a hoax, or that this is a creation of our brains. Ghost hunters try to look scientific by using scientific evidence, scientific instruments. One of the very common scientific instruments is the electromagnetic detectors. And we use electromagnetic detectors actually in science. But the ones that we'd use in the laboratory are entirely different than the ones that you can buy off the shelf. The ones that we use in the laboratory are frequency adjustable, and they're unidirectional. So I'm picking up frequencies only from this direction. These off-the-shelf electromagnetic detectors are omnidirectional, and they're not frequency adjustable. And there are electromagnetic frequencies around us all the time. Copper pipes in the wall, iron pipes in the wall, lead paints, metal furniture, any electronic equipment, your cell phones, your computers, the power lines nearby give off electrical impulses all the time. It would be normal and natural for the electromagnetic detectors to detect electromagnetic interference sometimes and not detect it other times, because that's just the nature of electromagnetism. One of their common evidence is ghost cold. Well, ghost cold is very, very common. Typically, ghost hunting is done in older houses, and older houses have cold spots. Probably even in your house there are cold spots. Spots where in the wintertime the heat from the furnace just doesn't reach as much. As well as cold is not just physical cold, but we also have emotional cold. Sometimes it doesn't matter how warm it is, you just can't warm yourself up because of that emotional state. And sometimes we get this emotional cold confused with physical cold. And you might feel emotionally cold, you might feel this cold, literally you even get to a shiver aspects, but if you were to look at the thermometer is still reading 73 degrees. And we consider things like this ghost cold. Ghost hunters also rely a lot on anecdotal evidence. I know there's a ghost out there because I saw a ghost, and this is my experience. And we start telling these experiences to everybody, and we embellish the stories, and we change our memories a little bit. Even though you don't believe you're changing your memories, you believe your memory is the way it is with the pareidolia and these ghost stories, and we bring it more emotional, and we fill in these gaps. Although there's no evidence There's lots of anecdotal evidence. Lots of these stories out there, and the stories haven't been controlled for. They're really not evidence. We also have to look for our errors in perception. Our perception is affected by a lot of things. Maybe even whether you had a good meal or you didn't have a good meal. Whether you got a good night's sleep or you didn't get a good night's sleep. Whether you ever noticed how after you watch a really scary movie, the building you're in creaks more? You start hearing all those little creaks and whatnot. Same with ghost hunting. You go in and you expect to hear all this stuff. You do hear all this stuff. It's just these errors on our perception. Those creaks and groans were in that house before you saw that scary movie. But now that you've seen that scary movie, they kind of jump to your foreground and jump to your consciousness. We also have a very strong hyperactive detection agency. And I've talked about this a couple of times already through this course, that when we see something, whether it's an animate object or an inanimate object, we process these differently through our brains. We process the animate objects differently than we process non-animate objects. And we start seeing things move around a little bit, we start giving them agency. Or why was this thing moving? Why was that mist moving in just that right way? Well, that mist was moving in the just right way because that's the way the mist moved. And yet, with our pareidolia to see these shapes, to see these images combined with our agency detection, we, in our brain, put that together that that's actually a ghost person moving through there, when really it's just the mist driving around, gently blowing through the breeze. The pareidolia, being able to recognize patterns, and we are exceptionally good at recognizing patterns, especially when it comes to recognizing faces. We're really, really good at recognizing faces. Whether those faces are actually there or not, we'll see faces in mists, we'll see faces in reflections of light, we'll see faces in the clouds, we'll see faces in the leaves on a tree, we'll see faces on a rock on Mars. We see faces all over the place, whether they were literally carved there or not, or whether that just happens to be the formation of the rock. Nobody took their hands up there and formed that cloud into that face, and yet we still see that face. Ghost hunters rely heavily on pareidolia, that these images in the films that I'm taking are really just random noise, but our brains put them together. And we have a very, very poor, inaccurate memory. Our memories change. There's confabulation. We're not doing it on purpose. We are not lying to ourselves or to other people. It's just what our brain does. It makes up details and fills in these spots. How could this possibly happen? Well, I remember this and this and this. Well, there's a little gap in here, so I make something up. And I don't even realize that I'm making it up, but I do it. And I fill in these gaps of my memory. This is a great way that we can create all these wonderful stories for. And also, a lot of ghost hunting happens to be done at night, late times, under poor observation conditions, frequently with sleep deprivation. When you have sleep deprivation, you have poor observation conditions, it's no wonder that people see things. It happens. There is something called a hypnagogic hallucination. Hypnagogic hallucinations are, have you ever had your alarm go off and you incorporated your alarm into your dream? Or right as you're about ready to wake up or you're about ready to fall asleep, you're kind of in that never, never land. You're really not awake, you're really not asleep. But some sound in your house occurs and you incorporate this sound into your dream. That's a hypnagogic hallucination. And these are very, very frequent. But everybody in this room has had a hypnagogic hallucination at some point, where this thing's, you're just so tired, you start seeing things, you start hearing things. One of the pseudosciences I want to talk about is free energy. Free energy would be a motor that produces more power than it consumes. For example, the engine in your car is consuming the energy from the fuel, the gasoline you put in there, and it's giving you motor energy so you can move around. But it actually takes more energy to get you to move around. So it's more energy in that fuel to get you actually the energy it takes to move that car. free energy violates laws of thermodynamics. Simple as that. Free energy violates laws of thermodynamics. It is absolutely, physically impossible to have a machine that creates more energy than it consumes. It's physically impossible. You know, there's lots of people out there that say, hey, this is free energy. You know, buy into my product. And some people truly believe that they found a free energy motor, a free energy engine. Some people are trying to scam you. They'll put up these little demonstrations, having it powered by a gasoline generated engine somewhere else, and here's this free energy motor coming through, and look how much energy it's creating. All it takes is a little bit more money to finance me before I can have this working product. And you'll be part of the finance, you'll be on the groundbreaking area of this, we'll make a fortune on this. Some of it's actually a con. Some people truly believe you. And many of these people with the free energy products are saying it's the reason why science hasn't published this yet is because it's a massive conspiracy. The oil companies don't want this information out there. The government doesn't want this information out there. The auto manufacturers don't want this information out there. The power companies don't want this information out there. And so it's this massive conspiracy. But you realize that massive conspiracy has to not only be in the United States again with all these things, but in also all of the other countries around the world. We have a strong tendency to forget about those other countries. But they have research scientists out there as well doing research and stuff. So it has to be a worldwide conspiracy to withhold this free energy. Why hasn't the standard science community discovered this? Why haven't the people who build the engines for those large automakers discovered this? It would be a whole lot cheaper if the power companies discovered a machine that would create a lot more energy than it consumes and free up a lot of environmental resources. But they claim this massive, massive conspiracy. Another pseudoscience is the psi phenomena. Psi phenomena, among other things, would include ESP, precognition, remote viewing. Big problem with psi phenomena is the studies cannot be reproduced. Every so often you come across a study that actually shows psi phenomena does actually exist. But remember the statistical significance that 1 in 20 studies is going to show a false positive. 1 in 20 times you're going to have a false positive. And this is quite simply because of the cluster effect. In very large numbers, they're going to be false positive. Things are going to cluster together. The data is just going to happen to be here, which is why one study is simply one study. You need all sorts of other data really to confirm it. And one that I always get a kick out of is spontaneous human combustion. Spontaneous human combustion is one of these really, really rare events where human beings seem to be totally consumed by flame, by fire, and yet their environment is not consumed by fire. This for a long time was not understood by science. We didn't understand how this occurred. It jumped into the pseudoscience, and people started talking about psi phenomena and alien problems and ghost things, all this stuff that might cause spontaneous human combustion. They made you believe that you could just be walking down the street sometime and suddenly burst into flame. Well, for a long time, science did not understand this. It was a mystery. But as actually science starts to investigate this, yes, we know exactly how this occurs. We know why this occurs. All of the anomalies in the situation have been resolved. And yet it's still considered a valid aspect, a valid part. Because the media publishes the dramatic. If this ever occurs, the media is going to grab onto it and publish it that this person went up in spontaneous human combustion. Oh my gosh. And it gets out there in the public. You get magazine articles about it, newspaper stories about it. But do they actually publish what the scientific community says happens, which is very, very tedious and monotonous and not exciting? There's a lot of other pseudosciences. And in class, in some of the videos, I present some more. In our next lecture, we're going to talk about grand conspiracy theories.